This video is provided as an educational and informational product only. Financial advice is not provided or implied.
I'm Chase Raz, and this is the Zilliqa Observer, another package portal update. This one about liquidity provisioning. Now that the export rewards have started to roll out, we're seeing people move in to provide liquidity for port. And I want to walk through what to do and not to do in that case, because we do see that the port price is declining right now. Most of that has to do with the play on swap. People are looking to exit a couple of other positions to get more swap for a ZIL swap vote. But we are seeing some people come into the liquidity pool for package portal that are doing so in a way that may not necessarily be advantageous to them. And I want to make sure no one is actively harming their position in terms of providing liquidity. So first, we want to talk about what rewards do you get for providing liquidity. And let's talk about all of the rewards up front. Let's just start there. So right now, until the end of June, just for a holding port or LPing port or whatever you want to do with it, just for having port, you get 10% weekly rewards. That goes to the end of June as scheduled. Then that goes away. It's never coming back, right? For the folks who are saying, well, that's unsustainable. As I said in a previous video, of course, it's designed to get port out far and wide into the ecosystem. So that continues to go. That continues to go until June. There are also right now overlapping with that monthly export rewards that are just starting. Now, we haven't seen these yet because export just rolled out a couple of days ago, but these monthly rewards, remember how they work. Of people who scan and then convert their export into port, fractional or in whole, that amount in aggregate across all scanners is matched. And that matched amount, right, that equivalent amount is distributed across port holders. Now, we'll look at how it's distributed in just a moment, because that's where some people are starting to make some critical mistakes with this. There are also summer shipments coming. These are some of the additional distributions of port that were talked about in the revised white paper, in the governance portal, the governance vote that was just out on the Zilliqa portal. You can get the information on that. Those are not currently happening. Those will overlap with the monthly export redemption through the summer, of course, and even into the fall, but they're not going to overlap at any part with the 10% weekly. So summer shipments don't start until after that 10% ends. So how does the distribution of export rewards in port, how does that work? Imagine a large pile of port. Again, what port? This is the port that's matched from scans. People scan, they take their export, they convert to port. That amount is matched and distributed to existing port holders in really in this particular ratio. 60% will be split among the liquidity providers. 30% will be split among holders. 10% will go to charity. And of course, I'm putting a lowercase c in case your name is charity, you are not getting 10%. This is to charitable causes, social causes, etc. that package portal finds important, right? They're building this into the tokenomics. What that means is the majority, the lion's share of the port rewards from the scanning and generation of export are going to be going to liquidity providers, but that's making people make some questionable decisions along the way, and that's what we want to look at. One of the main questionable decisions is that people are selling half of their port in order to get the ZIL to go into the liquidity pool. Now, look, I will say that's not happening to the level I had predicted or feared. Like I said, when we're looking at a down port price today, a lot of it has to do with swap more than it has to do with people doing this. But there still are some people doing this, and I want to walk through this. Don't sell half your port in order to get the ZIL to enter into the liquidity pool. Now, there are always going to be exceptions. I want to talk about when those exceptions may occur, what they look like, and just generally review the numbers. If you were to sell half of your port to get the ZIL to go into the LP, you would, of course, at first lower the price of port. While that's not necessarily a problem for all of us in the ecosystem, we've seen plenty of reductions over the past week or so. The entire crypto market's down. There are backlog problems, so some loss of faith. There are, the transition over to XPORT. There are several different reasons that we've talked about on this channel almost ad nauseum as to what's going on. The problem is you just took something that you have as an asset and reduced the value of the remaining part. That's somewhat concerning, but we could probably live with that for the most part, except for it's not the only concern. So not only do you lower the cost of port, but think about this. If you were to take your supply of port, whether it's 100 port, 10 port, 10,000 port, 100,000, whatever it is, if you were to take half of your port and sell it, remember the ratio that 60% of the rewards are going to be split among the liquidity providers and 30% are going to be split among the holders. So you've moved yourself out of that 60% chunk to the 30% chunk. That's a 2-to-1 ratio. Now, I'm not delusional in thinking that there's going to be some perfect even amount of port in both of these two piles, right? The liquidity pile as opposed to the holding pile. But all things being equal, let's treat it like that for just a moment. What you effectively do is move yourself from the 2 to the 1 in the 2-to-1 ratio. So if there were some type of homeostasis between the two, you'd effectively be nullifying the benefit of going and doing that in the first place. Then you would be putting your port or your ZIL at risk of impermanent loss. And as we see from ZIL Swap right now, the fees are not making up for impermanent loss in most pools. And I know some people want to argue that. I've been tracking the data for over, something like 45 days. Of course, some of you have been going longer, and I get that. But right now, the fees are not covering, in this moment in time, depending on when you entered that pool. So there's the fact that you're lowering the value of port for yourself and, of course, for others. Then you're getting subject to IL, which the fees may not make up for. And yeah, you will get ZWAP as well. That most likely will make up for it. But think about the other things that you're doing. You're taking half of your port and getting rid of it more than 2 months before 10% weekly rewards ends. 10% weekly on any type of asset is most likely not sustainable. We know that. This was a short-term, beneficial, get port out far and wide thing. It's really worth considering whether you'd want to get rid of half of your stack or a quarter of your stack or anything like that right now in order to do that. Look, if you still want to, go ahead. The market has shown that the price is resilient to some degree. The price is reduced almost 60% over the past week. So I guess you could really argue that the price isn't resilient, but when we look at buy and sell pressure, the sell pressure tends to be in large amounts at one time. It doesn't seem to be, with a few short exceptions, it doesn't seem to be a slow trickle down. It's a waterfall. People are potentially dumping. There are other things going on at play there. I've talked about that in other videos. I really want to keep this focused on the individual rather than the cumulative effects of what's happening with port. But absolutely keep that in mind. There are more than 2 months left of 10% weekly rewards on holding port in any way, in the LP or outside. If you do LP for any reason, for the XPORT rewards, for whatever, because remember that the 10% weekly and the monthly XPORT redemption rewards, you get both. They're overlapping right now. But when you enter the pool for any reason, make sure that you're sending the transaction ID over to Package Portal. This ensures that you're getting 10% on the amount you put in rather than whatever you're, potentially losing through impermanent loss or whatever the scenario may be. I reached out and asked, how do you want people to send that through given the support channel backlog? They're saying right now there are 2 really good ways to do that. One is through the support email, which I believe is support@packageportal.com. I believe that's what it is. And then 2, the other option is if you're on Telegram, go to the official Package Portal channel, the official one, and one of the admins will be able to take that information from you in a DM. Do not send that in a DM on Twitter, I've been told. Twitter is more social media operations. The admins there don't have the same level of access. So Telegram or email. Personally, I'll tell you, when I went into the pool, I used email. I'm more comfortable with that, going directly to the support channel. There are some really good questions and potential exceptions here, and I want to drill through them very quickly because this is the chatter I'm hearing on Twitter and Telegram, the places where Package Portal is most present. Should I sell to provide liquidity and have a bigger share? Now, this is a really interesting point. There are, of course, fewer port. As of right now, there are fewer port being offered as liquidity on ZIL Swap as there are out in the wild. This means a significantly larger number of people are splitting a 30% rewards portion, when a smaller number of people are splitting a 60%. So the theory is, even if I sell some or half, not all, but half of my port, I can go in and have a larger share in the liquidity pool. As of this moment, that is still true. However, the question you have to ask yourself at that moment is it worth giving up 10% weekly for more than 2 months with the ability for other people to come into the pool and thereby, level it out? Will that happen? I don't know. I say over and over and over on this channel, I don't do that type of prediction. I don't have a crystal ball for it. I can grab a magic 8 ball off of my game shelf, but I don't know. Assuming more people are going into the liquidity pool, your larger share advantage is going to be diluted over time, assuming that behavior. So is there a short-term play to be had here? Yeah, there absolutely is, but it could come at a midterm or long-term sacrifice. You're really going to have to make that based on your own personal asset and investment priorities, your own personal thoughts of where port is now, where it's going to go, where ZIL is now, where it's going to go, where swap is now, where it's going to go. This really has to be a personal decision, but I want you to be aware that there could be potential negative downsides of getting rid of half of your port in order to do this. Currently, what I'm advising people to do is bring new ZIL to the table. I know that's not realistic for everybody, right? I know that's not. Just because I'm doing that and talking to the people in my inner circle, right? My personal friends, and saying that's the way I'm going to go, I don't necessarily offer that same advice here publicly on the channel. I will be transparent and say that's what I'm doing, but it's drastically limiting my ability to go in because I don't have a bunch of free ZIL floating around, and I imagine you don't either, whether you have 10 ZIL or 10 million, right? There's probably not that much liquid just floating around, not tied up for you personally. Another good question I see is, if I provided liquidity, will the 60% stack on the 30%? And I don't know where this is. I kind of understand where this is coming from, but I don't fully. I think some folks have the model wrong. Remember what's happening in the rewards. 10% is going to charity. Package Portal's discretion of what community causes they want to support. 30% is going to holders, 60% is going to liquidity providers, and then based on your status as holder or liquidity provider, your share within that amount gets represented. This isn't like you're unlocking levels of rewards, right? Oh, I'm holding my port, so I get 30% of some max reward, and then I LP, so I get the other 60. That's not it. It's different pools. 60% are being funneled to the actual liquidity pool. 30% are being funneled to holders. What's your share of that specific volume, or that relative? What's your share of that particular volume? That's how you're compensated. So this isn't a situation where the 30% that's not what it is. There's one pile that goes one place, one pile goes another, and then your respective share within that place is what determines it. Now, can you do both? Well, in a way, right? Like I mentioned, I am holding port, which is going to get a portion of the 30%, and I am providing some for liquidity, and that's going to get its representative share of the 60% pile. Again, you have to weigh all of these considerations, but it's not stacking. It's not like that. At that point, it's two different piles. There's the pile you LP'd, that's part of the 60% thing, and there's the pile that you're holding, which is part of the 30% thing. Another question that I see quite commonly, and this is the last one I think I'm going to address: should I sell some rewards, some of the 10% weekly rewards, to buy ZIL or to get ZIL in return, and then LP? And look, this is an interesting idea. And if this is something you want to do, you've got to consider that. That's your own personal thing. Are there downsides to it? Yeah, sure, right? You're getting port that, okay, that's not going to then get that 10% compounding week after week after week until the end of June. But it is a much less reactionary position than saying I'm going to sell half of my port up front. If somebody's making anywhere from 1/10 of a ZIL to 1,000 ZIL every single week, depending on how much you hold, the max holder right now could be making somewhere between 9,000 and 10,000 ZIL per week. If you want to take some of those rewards, like, there's nobody telling you can't do that. That's perfectly valid. I just would say go ahead and take it into consideration of how much you want to do that, because you're cutting off the 10% weekly until June, versus what your ability to bring new ZIL in or close out other investment positions that you're ready to close out anyway. Look, as always, when it comes to investing, have a plan, know your limits, your thresholds, your tolerances, and stick to those things. Sometimes people here have a plan and stick to it, and they think that means like hard-headed, where, oh man, this thing's going the complete wrong way, but I'm going to stick to it because I said I was. Most of having a plan has to do with tolerances. What's your gain how much are you going to gain before you cash some out? How much are you going to lose before you divest yourself of some of it, before you exit your exposure to that asset, either fully or in part? Those are the types of things people mean when they say have a plan and stick to it. So evaluate all of that among your holdings, see what you're comfortable with. But there's no reason anybody should be telling you to do this or not do this. But it is a question that's come up. If you want to, do it. Like, at the end of the day, if you want to sell half of your port to get the ZIL and enter the pool, do it if you want to. Right? Like, that's a decision you have to make. But based on these questions and based on some of the other facts, I just happen to believe that not everybody is considering all of the components that were brought up here in this particular video. My goal here for myself is to do my own research, and then after that research, bring as much of that information to you as I can so that you can make your own decision. I have revealed transparently some of the things I've done here, but I'm not going to go further than that. I don't want it to influence anything you do. You could decide to sell all of your port today and move on to something else. That is perfectly your choice. Keep in mind all of these factors and then make the decision that's right for you. Take care, everybody.